One introduction ROSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. ROSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXO July 30th, 2025. No one voted for dirty air and water. A SELC webinar July 31st, 2025, 11:30 a.m. In Webisode 57DHXO1, no one voted for dirty air and water. How we make progress now in the South. A webinar by the Southern Environmental Law Center SELC, 11:30 a.m. on Thursday, July 31st, 2025. 2 headlines: The New York Times. 3 headlines: The Guardian. Main content. Headlines: The New York Times, United States Southern Environmental Law Center, SELC, no one voted for dirty air and water webinar July 31st, 2025, 11:30 a.m. Business. Starbucks earnings show same-store sales slid amid turnaround effort. The New York Times. California earthquake. Weather. Tsunami warning issued for Northern California. The New York Times. California. Los Angeles. Trump Judiciary. Criminal prosecutions lax. In some cases. Trump prosecutor in LA seeks to drop 2 high-profile criminal cases. The New York Times. Climate change opinion. We study climate change. It endangers you and your children. The New York Times. Democrats. Democratic New Jersey Senator Cory Booker accuses Democrats of being complicit with Trump in heated exchange. The New York Times. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times. July 29th, 2025. Democrats clash on Senate floor over policing bills and how to take on Trump. When 2 Democrats sought to win quick approval of a bipartisan package of policing legislation, a third rose to object, saying that party must take every opportunity to challenge President Trump. A heated exchange erupted after Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Democrat of Nevada, asked for unanimous approval to pass a bipartisan policing legislation, and Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, objected, saying, "Oh well, today, let us look the other way and pass some resources that will not go to Connecticut, that will not go to Illinois, that will not go to New York, that will go to the states he or she likes." That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It is time for Democrats to have a backbone. It is time for us to fight. It is time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that is why I am standing here. Do not question my integrity. Do not question my motives. I am standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I am standing for the Constitution, and I am standing for what is right. If Cory Booker had already been angry, the Senator Klobuchar personal digs about his attendance appeared to send him into a rage, leading him to yell about his integrity being questioned. He noted that he had only missed the meeting because it had been hastily scheduled, and he had a conflict. Cory Booker, who earlier this year assailed Trump in a 25-hour speech on the Senate floor that struck a nerve across the country, also vented his frustration with how some of the leaders in his party have chosen to take on Trump. What does the Democratic Party do? Comply? Allow him? Beg for scraps? He said, "No, I demand justice." Senator Cortez Masto, in closing, offered the flip side of the argument. "I am not sure the answer here is to stop bipartisan legislation that gives tools to law enforcement across the community to keep our communities safe," she said, adding that all Americans, regardless of political affiliation, want 911 to respond to an emergency call. In a statement to the New York Times after the debate, she said hers was the better way to win elections, noting that she had led the Democratic Senate campaign arm in 2020 when they won the majority. Standing up to Trump is not about long speeches, she said. It is about winning and then legislating and getting stuff done for the American people. Democrat state and local control. New York opinion. This is the moment Democrats have been talking about for years. The New York Times. This is the moment Democrats have been talking about for years. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times. July 30th, 2025. By Antonio Delgado, the Lieutenant Governor of New York. After months of hand-wringing and finger-pointing, Democrats are still learning how to navigate a political landscape dominated by the Trump Republican Party. With Democrats locked out of power in Washington, the burden has shifted to the state and local levels to prove that we can govern. Republicans have given us an opportunity to do just that. This month, Republicans in Washington, including every Republican representative from New York, voted for a morally bankrupt piece of legislation that slashes social safety net programs and cuts taxes for the ultra-wealthy. The problem is not scarcity, it is greed. It is time to offer Americans more than sternly worded social media posts and podcast interviews. These crises need to be taken on in a way that delivers for the working and middle classes without fear of reprisal from concentrated wealth or corporate power. First, let us be clear about how the Trump law will affect New York. 1.5 million New Yorkers could lose health insurance, while over 1 million could lose access to nutrition assistance. Many will lose access to both. By some estimates, these cuts will cost the state $10 billion per year. Hospitals will almost certainly close, especially in rural areas, and emergency rooms will be flooded. If you listen to Gov. Kathy Hochul, you would think there is nothing New York can do to fight back. Consider her response to Republicans slashing Medicaid and SNAP. No state can backfill the massive cuts. It is simply not true that New York cannot afford to protect our most vulnerable citizens. Our state, if an independent country, would be the 9th largest economy in the world. We also have the largest wealth inequality gap of any state. The money is there, but the political will is missing. There are serious policy options out there, but Democratic Governor Hochul has ruled out raising taxes on the ultra-wealthy and big corporations. The Invest in Our New York campaign includes a series of revenue proposals that could raise tens of billions of dollars. Annually, Democratic leaders should be putting ideas like these on the table, including an overhaul of the over $10 billion we give away annually through so-called economic development incentives to select businesses with no real return on investment. We just saw what it looks like to connect with voters on the most important issue of the day, affordability. In June, Zohran Mamdani pulled off one of the biggest upsets in the modern political history of New York establishment. Democrats have been talking about affordability for years and have very little to show for it. Mamdani got through to New Yorkers on the very same set of issues. Instead of lecturing them, he took the time to actually listen to what voters were feeling. He had the courage to directly engage with people and then brought a laser focus on the issues that they care about. As a result, he shattered turnout records and brought out young voters in droves. The Trump appeal is not rooted in Policy: it is rooted in style. He uses delusional bravado to cosplay as a rebel against a broken system that both parties help to rig. The timid survivalist politics of the Democratic establishment cannot compete with that. You cannot beat an immoral agent of chaos with risk aversion. You beat him with moral clarity, the kind that is willing to sacrifice corporate donations, political comfort, and maybe even your own career for the sake of the greater good. Trump does not win because people love his ideas. He wins because people stop believing in what Democrats have to offer. Republicans may control Washington, but Democrats run New York. If we want to win back Congress and the White House, we need to deliver real leadership in the places where Democrats have been trusted to govern. Economics: Rosep view Trump economic success so far has been for the benefit of the rich. From the article headline: opinion, the Trump presidency takes a better turn than New York Times. Florida Trump neighbors Palm Beach billionaires battle for oceanfront land. The New York Times: Hawaii and California earthquake. Weather: tsunami waves reach Hawaii and California after 8.8 magnitude earthquake near Russia. Live updates. The New York Times: Massachusetts Trump era judiciary in Massachusetts, a work stoppage forces judges to dismiss criminal cases. The New York Times: medicine and science. Rosep view the first non-physician to head the Centers for Disease Control. Susan Menarez is confirmed like RFK Jr. Menarez appears incompetent and uninterested in traditional day-to-day responsibilities of protecting the health of the American public as head of the CDC. From the article headline: Senate confirms Susan Menarez as CDC director. The New York Times: medicine and science. Food and Drug Administration top FDA official resigns under pressure. The New York Times: medicine and science, 3 out of 5 liver cancer cases are preventable. Study finds. The New York Times: New York City gun violence. Rosep view the gunman complained of brain damage from playing high school football and blamed the National Football League for his injury. The gunman traveled cross-country to shoot officials at the National Football League headquarters in New York City, but got off at the wrong floor from the elevator and ended up shooting unintended targets. Gun control in Nevada, the home state of the shooter, may have prevented this gun violence that left 4 dead. New York State has some gun control laws. From the article headline: the familiar suicide and final wish of the NYC gunman. The New York Times: New York City gun violence, an evening at the office and 4 lives ended by gunfire. The New York Times: New York City gun violence, even the New York strict gun laws could not prevent the Midtown shooting. The New York Times: New York City gun violence, mayoral candidates navigate a mass shooting that has rattled New York. The New York Times: New York City gun violence, Midtown Manhattan becomes the American stage for acts of violence. The New York Times: New York City mayoral race, anybody but Mamdani. 5 groups emerge to raise millions in attack funds. The New York Times: roller coasters and theme parks. Rosep view roller coasters as escape from politics. From the article headline: here are the best rides at the new Epic Universe theme park of Universal in Orlando. The New York Times: Trump aviation lack of safety. Federal investigators begin hearings on D.C. plane crash. The New York Times: Trump aviation lack of safety. Republicans unveil aviation safety bill before D.C. crash hearings. The New York Times: Trump aviation lack of safety, the biggest unanswered questions about the Reagan airport crash. The New York Times: Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. The Trump tax bill expands farm subsidies. Not all farmers will benefit. The New York Times: Trump and lack of empathy. Opinion 2 psychiatrists: a closer look at empathy. The New York Times: Trump and Epstein fallout. Rosep view a deal with Maxwell at this point sounds like a bribe for silence or for concealment of certain information by Maxwell. Like the cases in Los Angeles, this might seem like criminal prosecutions are lax in some cases. From the article headline: Ghislaine Maxwell lawyer says she will only testify for immunity or clemency. The New York Times: Trump and Epstein fallout. Rosep view: if the entire Epstein files are released with redaction of victim identification, any deal with Maxwell may be moot in concealing general evidence and moot in concealing any evidence of Epstein. Trump links. From the article headline: Senate Democrats try to force release of Epstein files with little known law. The New York Times: Trump MAGA Judiciary Senate rejecting whistleblower alarms confirms both to appeals court. The New York Times: Trump and media opinion, the Trump campaign to coerce advertisers into backing conservative media. The New York Times: Trump and religion. Rosep view workers are now allowed to attempt to convert other workers to their religion in the workplace. From the article headline: Colbert mocks presidential memo about religious conversions at work. The New York Times: Trump and religion, how conservative Christians cracked the Johnson Amendment. The New York Times: Trump tariffs opinion, there is a hard lesson in the Trump trade deal. The New York Times: Trump tariffs. Rosep view Trump negative effect on the economy. From the article headline: Trump is winning his trade war, what will that mean for the economy? The New York Times: Trump tariffs. Rosep view, probably due to Trump created chaos, there is still a lack of data available on the economy and economic effects of Trump tariffs. From the article headline: U.S. economy slowed in first half of 2025 as tariffs scrambled data. The New York Times: Trump tariffs. Rosep view, Trump and Trump attempt to affect actions of the Federal Reserve to reset or not reset interest rates. From the article headline: What to watch at the July meeting of the Federal Reserve. The New York Times: Trump and universities. Rosep view the search for bribes expands to Duke University. From the article headline: Trump administration freezes $108 million in funds to Duke University. The New York Times: Brazil Trump tariffs liberal government. President Lula on his feud with Trump, the Brazil tariff strategy, and more. The New York Times: Brazil Trump tariffs liberal government. President Lula voices frustration with Trump amid tariff battle. The New York Times: France artificial intelligence artwork, what is on the mind of Cupid at Versailles? AI can tell you. The New York Times: Italy. Rosep view the book City of God by St. Augustine, written in 426 AD. Pope Leo XIV and J.D. Vance both read the ancient book, but read it differently. Pope Leo interprets it as pushing love for the poor. J.D. Vance interprets it as pushing love for the immediate nuclear family only or first. From the article headline: The book that can inspire both a pope and a politician. The New York Times: Russia Far East and Russia suffers some damage from earthquake and tsunami. The New York Times: Russia earthquake, whether 8.8 magnitude earthquake off Russia could be one of the largest on record. The New York Times headlines: The Guardian: United States Rosep view civilization imperiled by Trump actions. From the article headline: U.S. placed on rights watch list over health of its Civil society under Trump U.S. News. The Guardian uplift, singing a moment that changed me 30 years after my pop career stalled. I found the courage to sing again. Life in style. The Guardian, weather. Tsunami updates. Live. Central and South American authorities order evacuations. Volcano in Russia starts erupting after earthquake off Russian coast. Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. Rosette view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. An international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosette view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.